The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Never trust success, especially when it comes as quickly as it did last season, because the success at the moment looks like it was fleeting. Can they play better than they did yesterday in Dallas? Yes, they can. Can they duplicate what they did last season? Doesn't look that way. Everything that went right last year now seems to be going wrong. What goes up must go down. And the question is this season going to look more like it has in the last couple of weeks? Or can they right the ship with 10 games to go? Schedule is not in their favor, and injuries are not in their favor. And the sky isn't quite falling, but the skies are getting pretty dark at this point. The 44-22 loss, yes, that was indicative of the kind of game that it was. Sometimes the final score doesn't tell the story. Could have been worse for the Commanders. They were totally outplayed yesterday in Dallas. They got it to 5 points. Dallas went right down the field, and scored before the half, and that was pretty much the ballgame. 27 points in the first half. They averaged almost 8 yards per play. And look, I like Joe Witt. I don't have any reason to dislike him, but as a soundbite, he's great. And where have we seen that before? Herman Edwards, great soundbite, not a great coach. Mike Singletary, great soundbite. Can't win with him. Not a good coach at all. Not saying Joe Witt is a bad coach, but so far he's a lot better as a soundbite than he is as a defensive coordinator. And I pulled this from last week, and if you're a player or if you're a fan, you know, this is the kind of talk you want to hear after you lose a game as they did on Monday night to Chicago.
It's hard. Nobody said this was going to be easy, but we'll get it done. You know, that if we're going to walk around here and with a negative cloud on us, which we're not, which I'm not, you know, because that's not productive. All right, we're going to work at it. We're going to try to find ways. We're going to be creative. And but at the end of the day, we got to win. You know, all this lip service and talking that I'm doing, if we don't win, it don't really matter. All right, so we got to win. The fun in football is winning. And I understand the fans, you know, they're passionate, and that's how they should be. All right, they should be passionate about these Commanders, and we got to do a better job.
Well,
period.
They didn't do a good job at all yesterday. This is a coach who's been preaching for a year and a half, ever since he got here, is that they have to get turnovers and they have to prevent explosive plays. Well, they got an F- on both of them yesterday. No turnovers. The Commanders turned it over twice themselves. Their turnover margin this year is -5, which puts them near the bottom of the league. And as a defense, they have created exactly 3 turnovers in 7 games. That's not good. And Dallas yesterday rang up 409 yards. They would have had more, but they were just trying to run out the clock at the end of the game. They were 6 for 12 on third downs. Dak Prescott. Now, not all of this is against Joe Witt defense. Let's be fair on this. But Dak Prescott is the Commanders' daddy or the Redskins' daddy or the Washington football team daddy. I think he's played against all 3 names. He is now 7-0 with 20 touchdowns and no interceptions at home against Washington in his career. I guess they've been a little bit worse here in Washington, but Dallas has averaged 41.7 points a game in those 7 wins. That's a lot of points, almost 42 points a game, and this is not just this season where their offense has been amazing. Prescott was 21 of 30 for 264 yards and 3 touchdowns yesterday. He has thrown for at least 3 scores 4 straight weeks, was sacked only once, ran 7 yards for a first down, and explosive plays. How about Dallas getting 1 for 44, and the 74-yarder kind of told the story of this secondary and what a disaster it's been. Marshawn Lattimore, and not all of what he gave up yesterday was his fault. The long pass to Pickens, which set up the touchdown just before the half, that was not on him. He defended that as well as you can. There's not much else he could have done on that play. The ball was just placed perfectly, and Pickens made a big catch. But how about how Lattimore started the game? He starts the game missing a tackle, Then he gets burned, and then he gives up pass interference at the 2-yard line and complains about it. That's how his game started yesterday. And on the 74-yarder, Quan Martin and Marshawn Lattimore collided. It was Keystone Cops, and CeeDee Lamb danced into the end zone with a 74-yard touchdown. The running game. Javonte Williams, only 19 carries, 116 yards. That's 6.1 yards a carry. Also scored a touchdown. Yeah, they had injuries, and the injuries were mainly on offense that you're playing with. I mean, the receiving core was ridiculous. Robbie Chosen, who was on the street a couple of weeks ago, I think he's changed his name several times, but it's Robbie Chosen now, finished with 4 catches on 4 targets. That's 1 fewer reception that he had in 11 games with Miami over 2 seasons combined. Jalen Lane is a rookie. I think he's going to be good. He had 3 catches for 60 yards, also dropped 1. Chris Moore, I was surprised he even made the team with all the passes he was dropping in the preseason. 2 catches for 59 yards, including a 44-yard catch and run. But, they're playing without their top receivers. It looks like they botched the Noah Brown situation. They didn't put him on injured reserve. Now he's on injured reserve. Terry McLaurin is a mystery. He's missed 4 games, and it doesn't look like he's going to be ready to play a week from tonight against Kansas City, but you never know. And if he was going to miss 4 games, why didn't they put him on injured reserve and bring somebody else up? We're finding out very little information about that. So you don't have that. And then Deebo Samuel, who at least gave them something in the Chicago game, playing with a bad heel, couldn't go yesterday. So they're down to nothing. And then Luke McCaffrey, foolishly on a kickoff at the end of the first half, tries to jump over a couple of tacklers, lands on his head. Fortunately, he was okay and came back in the game. But, I mean, you're going to be down to nothing at wide receiver. They continue to bring guys off the practice squad, just to fill spots. It's a bad situation. And the worst part about it maybe is the fact that, as Dan Quinn says, it's not even the injuries that are killing them.
Injuries are not the reason that we lost. Others may talk about who we did have and didn't have today, and I'm here to say it doesn't matter who you have or who is out when you don't give yourself a real chance at it. From turnover margin to penalties to missed tackles and drops, Dallas beat us, and we beat ourselves as well. And we're the ones that got ourselves into the hole. We're the same ones that got to dig ourselves out. But make no mistake, we're not playing to the standard we've set, and like I said, dug ourselves into it, and so we're the only ones that will dig ourselves out. I'm sure you guys got questions regarding Jaden. He definitely wanted it back in. He'll get an MRI on his hamstring tomorrow, so I'll have a better update for you when I visit with you guys in the afternoon. I just don't want to say one way or another and not give you accurate info on that, so I wanted to make sure I was clear as we begin. But lots to dig into, and we play again in 8 days. We got a lot of things to get better at, and we're going to work our ass off to do that.
Dan, with those big plays keep happening, how frustrating, and first of all, why, I guess, and then, but just how frustrating is it that game after game they keep happening?
Yeah, it's very frustrating. We're going to look at everything, man. We are going to look at everything to, have a play that goes down the field and you throw over your head or a good battle. Like I can live with that one, but the ones of the big explosive plays that I can't put my finger on, that's a lot for us to dig into. If I had one specific reason, I'd say this or this, but yeah, we got, like I said, a lot to get better at, and it's definitely frustrating.
With Jaden, could he, if the score was closer, would he have gone back in? Did the score have anything to do with him staying out?
No, he definitely wanted to come back, but like I said, I'll have a better sense for you guys for tomorrow. I'll just be guessing, and I don't want to do that. I'll give you updates as soon as I can.
Well, not a doctor, but he's still playing with that brace on the left knee, which kept him out for 2 games. Now he's got the hamstring. If he can't run, that's a big part of his game. Mariota, not a great answer either. He threw a pick 6 yesterday. That was one of the 2 turnovers. But when Quinn says that they have to look at everything, I don't think this is going to happen. And the season was further down the road and a bigger mess and really the end of the Ron Rivera era. But the Commanders played a game like this 2 years ago, Thanksgiving Day in Dallas, and Jack Del Rio got fired the next day. And Ron Rivera, defensive guy, took over as the defensive coordinator. I don't think Quinn is going to do that. I really don't. And I think, off the success that they had last year, you still have the momentum of that. And the defense did get better at the end of last year. It's a mess now. But this Quinn, I don't know if it's a hint, but I just wonder, what might happen with Joe Witt. There's things like this happen in a football season that, even if you like the guy, this has happened a couple of times with Baltimore, even when they've had really good seasons. They've gotten rid of a coordinator. And I don't think that's going to happen with Joe Witt, but it doesn't sound like that's completely being ruled out by Dan Quinn.
Yeah, I wish I could have one thing, because I would say, okay, it's that. And so I think you probably heard me say it over the last year and a half. Execution is players and coaches. And so that's what we'll dial into to find, are we putting the guys in the right spot? Are we, digging into the right locations? Like as a coach, you always look, all right, what's the right amount? What's too much? So we got a lot to look into. To have an extra day to go, a good bit of it's going to be about us before we even begin our preparation on Kansas City. 8 days from now, we got a lot of things to improve upon. And that's also why I said it at the beginning, that the injuries are not the reason we lost. If you don't give yourself a real shot at things, to play it right, it just, you can't give yourself a good game doing that.
Yeah, they had 3 straight losses last year. You didn't hear Dan Quinn talking like this. This is 2 straight losses, but this one was worse than just a bad loss because it was to Dallas, and they just they beat themselves, and he's looking at a team now that is not living the culture that he preaches all the time. They got down on themselves yesterday. And, listen to what Deron Payne said. Deron Payne actually had a pretty decent game for them.
Sure, this is embarrassing, honestly. We are a way better team than what we putting on tape nowadays, so we just got to get back to it.
How do you guys turn this thing around with KC up next?
We got 8 days to just focus on getting our game right and just getting out there and compete.
Well, how do they do that? I mean, they are down, and again, injury's not a total excuse on this, but they lost Dorrance Armstrong in the first half. He was questionable to play anyway because he suffered a hamstring injury against Chicago on Monday night, but they put him out there, and then he went down with a knee injury. When he goes down, you're already down on the defensive line. Dietrich Wise, John Batiste, and Drake Jackson all are on injured reserve. So the edge rotation, the edge rushers yesterday, and this is part of the issue here too. Preston Smith recently signed on the street. He played here some years ago, but they picked him up when the injury started to mount. Von Miller is 36 years old. He's played okay, but he can't play every down. And Jacob Martin, who they actually were putting out there in key situations yesterday, he actually looked like he had something. So that's a little bit encouraging. But I mean, the overall picture is this, and Jerry Brewer articulates this very well in the Washington Post today. He says, we tend to think these kind of catastrophes don't happen anymore because the organization is competent again, from the owner's suite to the football operations department to the coaching staff to the players. The Commanders are still in the newlywed phase, but with a 3-4 record and an overwhelming amount of injuries and their warts becoming impossible to hide, the honeymoon period is over for this new era. Life is not all Hail Marys and Victory Mondays. If the Commanders have been eating chocolate-covered strawberries and sipping champagne, well, now it's time to banish someone to sleep on the couch. Hard conversations must be had. And again, that gets back to my question about Joe Witt. He says injuries have only been part of the problem. This is Jerry Brewer in the Post. This is not the physical team that embraced all challenges last season. The Commanders look soft. They look old and slow, particularly on defense. They don't exploit clear advantages, and they can't cover up any of their weaknesses. And look, I don't blame Adam Peters for going for Marshawn Lattimore, but he's washed. He's done. You got to put him out there because you don't have anybody else. He's got to play. But he's making $18 million, and he stinks. He's a liability out there now. And what they did last year, spackling with older players, well, you haven't heard much about Bobby Wagner this year, have you? Yeah, I mean, God bless him, but 35 years old. You cannot play these guys into the ground like they're doing at their ages and not pay the piper, and that's where they are right now. This Marcus Mariota, and he may be the starting quarterback for the next few weeks, which is a murderer's row of games. They're already 10-point underdogs for the game a week from tonight in Kansas City. And then after that, what's the game after that? I think they play it's Detroit in 2 weeks. And let's see, Seattle. Seattle is here. That's the Sunday night game. They're 4-2. So the next 3 teams that they play are all playoff-worthy teams, and you know that Detroit's going to be coming in here looking for revenge. So Marcus Mariota may be your quarterback, and as good as he looked last year in relief, he didn't make a start. Not a good start against Atlanta, and not a good not a good takeover role yesterday in Dallas. And he speaks for the team, but speaks for himself as well here.
You feel all of those feelings. You feel all those emotions. And I don't think it's healthy to try to suppress it. I think it's good and healthy for us to be able to sit there and, okay, this is where we're at. This is what it looks like. And the more that we can come to terms with, okay, this is how we're going to fix it, and not point the finger at each other and try to blame one another for it. Like, at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and we're going to figure out a way to do it and make it right. And like I said, I firmly believe in the guys in the locker room. I believe in the culture that DQ's built here. And the more that we can come together and the more that we'll figure this whole thing out together, I think we'll be just fine.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what fine means. Again, there's 10 games left, and this is a week-to-week league. You win a couple of games, everything looks different. But right now, here's how bad it looks. This is tackle Johnny Newton.
That's hell. That's how frustrating it is. That's hell. It's very frustrating. We know we got the players on this team to put on and put out, but we're just not getting the results we want.
No. So 10-point underdogs heading to Kansas City a week from tonight. We're supposed to get an update today on Jaden Daniels, and I'm sure they're going to ask about Terry McLaurin, but it's very mysterious as to what's going on there. Missing 4 games and not going on injured reserve, and we get very little information during the week on him. So, not a good situation, and it's not a great situation in College Park either. There's no line out yet because Indiana plays this week and Maryland does not. But after what really, I guess, in the rearview mirror doesn't look like much of a win over Wisconsin, they got shut out at home on Saturday by Ohio State. But the Maryland situation has turned dark. You know, the football in this town is not very good right now. And Maryland once again blew a fourth-quarter lead and lost to UCLA. And there's a name out there that's floating around, and there's a new athletic director in College Park. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the wind is blowing in that direction. We'll get there and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
One of the reasons that the New York Knicks have not won a championship since 1973 is something that happened 49 years ago today. Essentially, they could have had the best player in the game for nothing and said no. We'll get to that incredible story in the next hour. Meantime, the Commanders' story has gone from promising to now just, I don't know. There's hysteria out there. Everybody wants somebody fired, including Adam Peters, which makes no sense. I mean, Adam Peters put together a roster last year which went far beyond expectations. And, okay, you're having to pay the piper this year with a roster that's old and injured. It's the oldest team in the league, and injuries are adding up. But after all those years of Dan Snyder and Vinny and whoever else he had in the front office, Bruce Allen, other assorted clowns, you want to get rid of this guy right now? No, you don't. This is an organization that was basically strip-mined over a period of time, including the Ron Rivera coach-centric era, 4 years, where he went 0 for 4 on first-round picks. 0 for 4. That's hard to do, but he did it. And it's a depleted roster. And, you know, it was spackled over, and it's now starting to crumble, and you got to fix it. And, yeah, I mean, he swung and missed. No question. Marshawn Lattimore, big miss. 3 draft picks and a big salary, and he's a disaster. He's more of a liability than anything else out on the field. No question about that. But the Frankie Louvous of the world, the draft picks that they have, they've not Busville yet, any of them, as far as I know. And it's just a roster that needs to be tuned up. And what we heard last year going into the season was, oh, yeah, it's going to take 2 or 3 years to rebuild this defense. And he was able to spackle it together last year, but he did it with older players. And right now he's got to, bone up more on the draft, not bone up, but add more in the draft on defense and make some good free agent signings. They will have some money. But they're still in the go-for-it mode. They've got this year. Now, maybe this year is down the tubes. We'll see. But next year has got to be a go-for-it year again because you're still going to have Jaden Daniels under a rookie contract. After next year, things get to be more complicated with an extension. But you also have number 5. And as long as you have 5, and hopefully they can keep him a little more healthy than he's been this year, then you have hope for almost any season. I mean, look at Cincinnati. Cincinnati Bengals, despite what we saw from Joe Flacco last Thursday, Cincinnati Bengals probably ended their season when Joe Burrow got hurt in the second game. Maybe Joe Burrow makes it back, and maybe they're still in it. I don't know. That would be another miracle year from 40-year-old Joe Flacco if he can keep him in it. But they went from contenders to a mess based on one injury, and that hasn't necessarily been the case here. But you got a lot of money sitting on the sidelines right now, led by Terry McLaurin, who has missed the last 4 games. Deebo Samuel not making as much money, but didn't play last week or yesterday. That's a problem. So they will try to figure it out. And, again, we'll get more from Dan Quinn coming up this afternoon when he talks to the media. Meantime, we got this brewing situation in College Park, which I am closer now to than before, being a season ticket holder. And having sent my son to Indiana, I'm just wondering what kind of gear to wear to the game on November 1st, because that's not going to be pretty. Indiana is really good, really, really good. And they just gave Kurt Cignetti a contract it's $93 million guaranteed. If they want to get out of it, it's like all these others, $50 million or so. But if he wants to leave, it's 15 to buy himself out of the contract, which would be nothing if he wants to go to, let's say, Penn State. He could win the national title this year at Indiana, and that's no longer a laughing matter because they're number 2 in the country. He could do that, and he could go to Penn State after that. That's the wild, wild west of college football. Meantime, I like Mike Locksley. I like him a lot, and I hope that things get right here and they get to a bowl game. It's going to be tough. I don't think they have any chance of beating Indiana, and then maybe they win a game at Rutgers, and then there's what do they have? Michigan and Michigan State left on the schedule, and Illinois I think is on the road as well. So they have 4 wins. You have to get 6. I don't know if there's 2 wins left in that group of 4 games, 5 games. So we'll see. But this is Mike Locksley last week before they played at UCLA, and once again, blew a fourth-quarter lead on the firing of James Franklin at Penn State, and how he approached that.
It's part of the game. I mean, I've texted with James. It's the landscape we're in. Is it surprising? Yeah, it's surprising. I mean, they were in the semifinals, I think, a couple of years ago or last year or whatever it was. But it's the landscape. That's why the best is now and not ahead, because we learned very quickly that, you're only as good as the last game you played and the last game you've won. And as coaches, I think we all understand that. And as I've said, I'm at that point in my career where, it is what it is. We're going to coach the crap out of them. And if it's good enough, it's good enough. And, for James, obviously disappointed for him and his family, knowing him well, but has no bearing on what we got to do around here.
Yeah, if it's good enough, it's good enough. If it's not good enough, you have a new athletic director in Jim Smith, who worked at Ohio State, who's been brought here to get excitement up, particularly about football, because that's what drives the bus money-wise. And I'm not saying James Franklin would necessarily do that, but Franklin has worked at Maryland before. He was the coach in waiting at one point for Ralph Friedgen before he left for Vanderbilt. Had success there, went to Penn State, and had great success in games that weren't that big. big games, he was not Big Game James. But he is a name that could come in here, get people excited about football. I hope it doesn't happen, but he's out there. And this past weekend, he schlepped to Georgia to openly campaign for another job. There was no question about what he was doing, even though he's flush with cash right now, $49 million buyout. I would think that he sits out a year, but maybe not, because there's some really good jobs. Florida just opened up the other day. So there's jobs out there. But this was Franklin talking to the crew of ESPN, the game day crew, about what happened and how it happened at Penn State a week ago Sunday.
We have a team meeting at 1:45. About 1:30, the AD walked in and said, "We're going to make a change. I'm sorry." Was in shock, obviously. Really took the next 15 minutes to let my kids know so they wouldn't find out on the internet, and then walked down and had a super emotional meeting with the team to tell them I was leaving. That was it. It was that quick. Obviously, pretty much in shock as that was going on.
I mean, given all of the things that you accomplished there and the number of games that you won, how fairly do you feel you were treated by making this decision?
Well, fair is not for me to decide, right? That's for other people to decide. A decision that was made that was hard for me to comprehend at the time. But what I want to do is I want to focus on all the unbelievable moments. I had a great run there, 12 years. Penn State was good to me and my family. Most importantly, it's about the players. I'm a player's coach. I always have been. So that's the hardest part, is walking away from all those young men in that locker room, the recruits that were committed to us, a lot of tough conversations. So that's the challenge, is it's the people at the end of the day, the coaches, the staffs, their families, the kids. What I don't think people realize is how many people this affects, a ton of people. So that's where my heart breaks.
Coach, thank you for doing this. It speaks volumes about who you are as a man, so thank you for coming up here and doing this. When a coach gets fired, it touches a lot of people, like you said, the coach, his staff, and of course the players. Would you mind speaking on how this has affected your family?
Yeah. So, my daughters, you guys have seen pictures. They came to Penn State when they were 4 and 5 years old. We were blessed that the majority of their upbringing was in State College. They're now a freshman in college and a senior in high school. My youngest thought she was going to go to Penn State. Obviously, the plans have changed there. But for me, I think about everybody. I remember being the head coach of Vanderbilt and having an Easter party and standing up there and talking to all the coaches and the wives and the kids. And the first time, that moment, I looked out and I realized I'm responsible for all these people. If I'm successful, all these people will flourish. And if I'm not, it's going to create a lot of challenges for a ton of different people. So that's really what the last 6 days have been. Most importantly, comforting my daughters. My wife is the toughest one in the family, so I don't need to worry about her. But then it's been a ton of players reaching out, talking to their parents, telling them to take a deep breath, everything's going to be fine. And then the same thing with recruits. It's been a lot, but most importantly, that's what it's all about for me. I got in this business to help people and most importantly, young men, and I'm going to continue to do that.
So he wants another job. It doesn't sound like he wants to sit out a year, but we'll see. We'll see what kind of offers he has. But, for now, and I don't know why he should feel this way, because his record against top teams this year going in wasn't good. They almost knocked off Oregon, and everything would be different if they did. But then collapsing the next 2 weeks, now they lost to teams that are better than, certainly better than UCLA was through their first 4 games. They have turned things around with an interim coach who won 3 straight. And then Northwestern is not that bad. But that's 3 straight losses, and you lose the homecoming game to Northwestern. It was time to go. But, as he says,
it feels surreal. I just got a message, from Drew Allar's dad that he's sitting home as well. We both should be in Iowa. It's what we're used to doing and how we operate. And I've been doing this for 30 years and 15 years as a head coach. To think essentially 6 games ago, we were fighting for a chance to be in the national championship, a 2-minute drive away. So that's the thing. I really can't answer that, Kirk. 12 years, a ton of good moments, a bunch of big wins. but decisions were made. And I'm not involved in those decisions. I'm very, very grateful for the time I had, and most importantly, for the relationships I was able to build. I thought we were going to win a national championship there. We were close. That goal hasn't changed. We're just going to go win a national championship somewhere else now.
Hell yeah.
Great.
Hell yeah.
You made the statement, it's not like up to you to decide what's fair or unfair when Reese answered that question. I'm going to answer it. It's unfair as hell for you to go to the Rose Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, get in the Final Four, come out being ranked number 1 this year, an expectation that you created by what you accomplished at Penn State. And for those people not to show enough appreciation for that and gratitude for all the hard work that you did, I'm saying it's unfair. But I will ask you this, because this is one thing that I hated, was we were ranked number 1 going into preseason several times, and I hated that, absolutely hated it, because you didn't know how it was going to affect your team.
Yep.
So being number 1 out of the box this year, do you think that affected the way your team sort of, prepared to start the season?
Yeah, well, I think, Coach, you understand this better than anybody, right? It's you've used the phrase rat poison, right?
Yeah.
The negative is rat poison that you got to get everybody to tune out, and the positive is rat poison. But that creates a ton of pressure, and pressure that we've earned. We created that pressure, and I think that's the thing that I'm most proud of, the point that you said. When I took over the program 12 years ago, it was in a very different situation than it is now. And that's something I take great pride in, right? The program was in a very, very difficult position, one of the most historical sanctions in NCAA history, and we got them back to be a consistent contender. So you understand how hard that is and the work that went into it. But the expectations, we created them. So I take pride in that. Obviously, we got to do a better job of tuning all that noise out and focus on being 1-0 and the task at hand.
Okay, but realize this, and he is patting himself on the back for what he did at Penn State, and should. I mean, they did make it to the semifinals last year, and they were a consistent, 2, maybe 3-loss team when they had a bad season. They were good, but let's not discount what Bill O'Brien did in the wake of the horrible Jerry Sandusky scandal. Bill O'Brien stepped in and made that team stay on track for 2 years. They were ineligible to play in bowls. They had all these scholarship losses. It was a mess, and there were people like Kirk Herbstreit who said, "Oh, it's going to take a decade to recover from this." Well, Bill O'Brien really set the stage for Franklin to come in. Not that Franklin did a bad job, but it wasn't really Franklin taking over immediately after the Sandusky scandal that forced Joe Paterno out the door. There were other things that happened in between, so that by the time he got there, it was a little bit calmer than it had been when O'Brien stepped into a firestorm there. That was a mess, an absolute mess. And Franklin's done a good job there, and did he deserve to be fired? No, but that's the way things work these days, and that's why they have those buyouts. The buyout is there so that you can't just up and leave, although you can negotiate what you want, and good for Cignetti for negotiating only a $15 million buyout. But it's also the school saying we want you. And we want to make sure that nobody's able to poach you and just pay for the buyout, because, if you stay on and we decide to get rid of you, and it's happening more and more, and people are writing these checks, I mean, it's insane. And I think that Brian Kelly is going to be out the door at LSU, even with a $53 million buyout. That's the way they do it. I loved Ed Orgeron. Ed Orgeron, who led them to their last national championship, maybe one of the best college teams of all time, with Joe Burrow when they won 15-0, and then things went downhill for a couple of years, and the buyout for him was $17 million. And he was meeting with school officials, and they told him what the buyout was, and he said, "How soon would you like me to get out that door?" And the narrative on Brian Kelly, who, again, lost over the weekend, lost a game that probably should have won, the narrative was, oh, well, Brian Kelly's a really good coach. If Ed Orgeron can win a national title at LSU, anybody can do that. Well, Brian Kelly had a generational quarterback in Jaden Daniels and had seasons of 3 and 4 losses with him. So, these coaches that they're swinging big on who knows? I think the next round, I think they're going to look more like in the Cignetti level. Cignetti did a really great job at James Madison, making $600,000 a year. Goes to Indiana for $4.2 million, and now he's making more than double that in 2 years. He's coached at Indiana for a year and a half. He went from $4.2 million to $11.5 million a year. It's just an insane gold rush that's going on, and James Franklin is part of the bigger picture. And whether he winds up here or he winds up someplace else, somebody's going to take a big swing at him, and he'll just pocket that money and move on. That's a great country. You know who's looking like a Rudy with a lot of money is Tua Tagovailoa, or maybe the opposite of Rudy. It looks like that's over. I was watching actually the Red Zone channel yesterday, and Jim Nantz was doing, what was he doing? Philly and Minnesota, I think. And he said there could be some news coming out of Miami, like he's been tipped off. I mean, it seems like Mike McDaniel has got to be out the door. They're 1-5 now. They're 1-6 now after getting blown out by Cleveland yesterday, 31-6. And Tua, who basically threw his teammates under the bus last week when he talked about players-only meetings and players either not showing up or showing up late. He later apologized for that. But I think he's done there. I mean, they gave him the money, but they've got to get out of it. He threw 3 interceptions. One of them was returned for a touchdown. He also gave the Browns the ball at the 1-yard line. And speaking of bus, Zach Wilson, once the number 2 pick of the draft, he's on the Dolphins roster. He's now third string because when they benched Tua in the second half, they put in Quinn Ewers, the Texas quarterback who kept Arch Manning on the bench for 2 years. Ewers' first drive was a mess. Almost threw a pick on his first play, completed a pass for -1 yard on the second, and fumbled the snap on the third. That's a disaster. And a couple of years ago, Miami was one of the great stories in the league. And this is what happens to a guy like Mike McDaniel. Yeah, he looks different. He speaks differently. He wears these like capri pants on the sidelines. He has like this dry sense of humor. And while he's winning, it's quirky. When he's losing, he's weird. And right now, they're losing. They stink. And Tua Tagovailoa, who, again, they gave that big contract to, and he gets hurt a lot, and now he just stinks. Now he's just terrible. The Browns' defense is not that bad, but they weren't a good team either. And now they win a game like this against a Dolphin team. I don't know if you pat yourself on the back after something like that. And McDaniel looks like now the kind of guy that's going to spend the rest of his life as like a quarterback's coach or a guy who's involved in offensive strategy. But, you know, it looks like his days as a head coach have had their run. There's like not everybody needs to have like that Vince Lombardi personality, but what you saw with him was only going to work if they continued to win, and once they hit the skids, it just gets exacerbated. So Miami Dolphins, complete mess. Mike McDaniel, who's part of the Shanahan tree, like many guys who became head coaches in the league, they were all part of the Mike Shanahan staff here. Nobody really knew him. He's not a kind of guy who's going to draw a lot of attention to himself. But he has arisen to be a head coach, only to probably become the next one to lose his job. And that. I would not be surprised if we hear something today that he's out the door. He was on the hot seat a couple of weeks ago, won a game, saved his job. But after what we saw yesterday against a Cleveland Browns team that is not very good, is not going to keep him there. And then what do you do with Tua? I mean, that contract, there's a lot of money to eat there. So a mess. And the problems that are going on here with the local football team, probably not as bad as they are with the Miami Dolphins, but they're bad. And we'll get to more on that coming up. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. 3 home runs, 6 innings of shutout baseball, 10 strikeouts. Is there a comp in sports to what Shohei Ohtani did on Friday night in a game that sent them to the World Series? I don't know. I'm scratching my head to come up with comps. It's like Deion Sanders catching 10 passes, including the winning touchdown, and returning a pick six. I don't know. I mean, there are all kinds of things you could come up with, but we may have had the greatest performance in the history of sports on Friday night, and that may not be hyperbole. Problem is, it's baseball, and people aren't paying enough attention because we're in the teeth of football season. Everything is coming together. It does, I know, every October, but even more so now. You've got the NBA starting up tomorrow night. Hockey's been going on for a week. We're in the middle of not just college football season, but we're a little more than a third of the way into the NFL season. And college basketball is jumping into the picture now. See, college basketball gets chewed up by football, and nobody starts paying attention until after the Super Bowl, and then there's only a couple of weeks left in the regular season before they start the conference tournaments. And the thing that everybody cares about, and not because it's college basketball, but because of the office pool, is the NCAA tournament. And my theory on this, I said this last week, I don't know whether you buy this or not, but it's not just that we have so many channels. Like, when I was a kid, we had basically four. You had CBS, which was Channel 9, NBC, Channel 4, ABC, Channel 7, and then Channel 5, which at that point was Metro Media. It wasn't even Fox yet. We also had Channel 20. I think Channel 50 came along. There was even a Channel 14 at one time. But, by and large, you're dealing with 3-4 channels. Well, now you got all these different channels, and here's something else. The remote control. You had to be really wealthy to have remote control in those days. Most people didn't have it. And the ability to change channels from the chair was a great luxury. Now you can't change the channel on the set. My remote control when I was babysitting for my sisters was my sisters. Hey, get up and change the channel. But no, for most people, you had to get off your tuchus and change the channel. And so what we have now with sports is you got all this stuff going on, and maybe these college basketball games, which, match some of the top teams in the country, are not necessarily going to draw people to sit for the entire game. But if they tune over for 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, that's good enough. And we got 2 Monday night football games tonight again. They're going to overlap. Then you got the Manning cast some nights to distract you from that. It doesn't matter. It's just enough eyeballs that get on there at some point, some quarter hour that helps you win, and that's where we are. Everything is a television show right now. And the television show for the Commanders, as we segue here, is a nightmare at this point. And it's like Hubie Brown once said. He was coaching the Knicks at the time, and he says, I look across the court, and their power forward is Kevin McHale, and I got Alan Bannister, and I have to laugh. That was Hubie. Like, we're playing them with with Hall of Fame guys, Bird, Parrish, and McHale, and we got guys like Alan Bannister. That's what we got. And so as the Commanders played yesterday, they're watching C.D. Lamb, who just, I'm sure he's looking at that secondary during the week and saying, I can't wait to get back. And he was brilliant yesterday. He torched them, including a 74-yard play where Marshawn Lattimore and Quan Martin collided. That was a great look. He wound up catching with George Pickens, the two of them together, caught over 200 yards in passes and a touchdown, explosive plays, 74 and 44 yards. They torched them, and you're talking about two of the premier receivers in the league in Lamb and Pickens, and much like Hubie Brown, Dan Quinn looking across the field and seeing those guys and looking at his wide receiving core, which is Robbie Chosen, who was on the street a couple of weeks ago, just elevated from the practice squad. You had Jalen Lane, who's a rookie, and he may wind up being good, but he's just a rookie at this point. And Chris Moore, who couldn't catch a cold during the season, he's out there. And that's the receivers that Jaden Daniels is having to throw to, and Marcus Mariota, when he came in when Daniels got hurt his hamstring. You could use that as an excuse for what were, even before he got hurt, very pedestrian numbers for Jaden Daniels. He was 12 of 22 for 156 yards and one touchdown. He also had a fumble. And so, Quinn was asked, well, is it that the receivers that he's working with now are not the receivers that he worked with throughout the season. Now, he hasn't had Terry McLaurin in a month. He hasn't had Noah Brown in more than that time. And Deebo Samuel, who at least was holding down the fort, he didn't play at all yesterday. Here's Quinn.
That's fair. It's a difficult one to overcome. But it doesn't make up the whole margin to me. Where do we find our edges? We didn't run the ball as effectively as I thought we could. That would help when it gets into the play-pass game.
Let me play that again. That got cut off. Here we go.
That's fair. It's a difficult one to overcome. But it doesn't make up the whole margin to me. Where do we find our edges? We didn't run the ball as effectively as I thought we could. That would help when it gets into the play-pass game for things. We knew there was a specific way for us to go win this game when you're going into it, whether you're shorthanded at one spot or another. And when it doesn't go that way, obviously it gets frustrating.
Yeah. Now, Mariota, who came in and threw the pick six, also having trouble finding his receivers, did a lot of running, in fact, did kind of running for his life, but did pick up some ground there. He's not going to use that as an excuse either.
At the end of the day, we're all professional football players, and given the opportunity, we got to make some plays. So we didn't execute the way that we wanted to, especially in some of these critical situations. But I thought we did move the ball for the most part. But at the end of the day, when you're not executing and this game is tight with the margins, it's tough, and we just didn't do enough.
Yeah, and without this passing game, they didn't have any running game yesterday. Bill Krosky-Merritt, who has been sensational at times and has fumbled, had fumbles consecutive games, didn't fumble yesterday, but didn't give him anything. He got 13 carries, which is the second most he's ever gotten in a game, and he had 33 yards. That's 2.5 yards a carry. That's not going to get it done either. They're going to be underdogs, whether it's Mariota or Daniels in Kansas City on Monday night, a week from tonight. They're already 10-point underdogs in this game, and I would imagine if we get an update today on Daniels that he's out, the line may even go higher than that. But Mariota is trying to keep the stiff upper lip here. It's bad, but it's 3-4 now. The season has not yet gotten away from him.
When for a good amount of time, when we've played as well as we've played, and then you kind of hit a little bit of a lull, you do feel like you get punched in the face a little bit. And I think that was kind of his message. It's like, okay, how are we going to respond? And I believe in the guys in the locker room. I full-heartedly know that we'll respond the right way, and we'll get back to work.
Oh, that was kind of the challenge yesterday from Dan Quinn. Jeremy Reeves, special teams captain, playing more and more at safety, also good at the locker room pick-me-up.
We can talk about it and all that as much as we want to, but we got to go do it. And that's on us. That's on each player. That's on all of us taking accountability to what we get asked to do and doing it at a high level. I don't care the circumstances. I don't give a damn about any of that stuff, right? At the end of the day, we asked to do the job, and we got to go do it. No matter how hard or uncomfortable it is, we all getting paid to do this, right? So just understanding that, that's our job.
Yeah, that's your job. So we'll find out more from Dan Quinn on the injuries today, including Jaden Daniels, as they have a long week. They got an extra day. They play in Kansas City a week from tonight. After that, Seattle at home. That's the Sunday night game where at least they'll have the throwback uniforms. And then they have to play Detroit the following weekend at home. And Detroit's going to be, as they say, loaded for bear coming in here to face the Commanders. See this, by the way, this Brandon Aubrey. This is a hell of a story, and maybe it ties in with what we're seeing with Shohei Ohtani. That Shohei Ohtani is the best baseball player of all time. Is it too early to say that Brandon Aubrey is the best kicker of all time? Brandon Aubrey yesterday hit a 61-yard field goal in the second quarter that was like a chip shot. I mean, it put Dallas up 20-8. It was his fifth kick from at least 60 yards out. That's the most field goals from 60 or deeper in NFL history, and he is in his third year in the league. These numbers are just incredible here. He made his first 35 field goals once he got into the league. That's a record. 14 field goals from 50 yards or more last year, the most ever in a season in NFL history. The longest made field goal in Cowboys history, 65 yards, made in Week 3 last season against the Ravens. and that is the second longest field goal in history. The longest, of course, was made by the Ravens kicker. 5 career field goals from 60 yards or deeper. That's the most in NFL history. He's connected on 91 of his 100 field goal attempts in his career. No one has ever attempted or made more field goals in Aubrey since he came in the league in 2023. Now, realize that. Now, it's not as long a career as Mark Mosley, and Mark Mosley was kicking off grass for most of his career. There were some artificial turf games. And sometimes he was kicking in the mud, including here at RFK Stadium. But just looking at Mark Mosley, who is the only kicker ever to win MVP in that bizarre 1982 season, which was cut in half by the strike. But the longest field goal that he made in that year, and he set a record, it seems a laughable record now when you think of Aubrey making his first 35. But Mosley set a record that had gone back to the previous season of 23 in a row. He hit 20 of 21 for the season. His longest was 48. The longest field goal he ever hit in his career was 54 yards. He was a 65% career kicker. This is Mosley. Mosley, the legendary kicker here in Washington. It just shows you what has happened to the field goal and where it's going to go from here, because there'll be more Brandon Aubreys who come down the pike. And will the league do something where, look, if you get a touchback, you get the ball at the 35. If you want to kick a field goal that's 60 yards plus, what do you need? 25 yards? Something like that? It ain't much. So we'll see what they do. But right now, if you can't kick 50 yards consistently, you can't kick in the league. And Mosley, who played, 15, 16 years, longest he ever made was 54 yards. Just amazing. Just amazing. Also from yesterday, the mayor was in Dallas, and Muriel Bowser touring around. She had Darryl Green with her, and they were looking at stadium designs. They're looking at Jerry World, how it was built, and some of the things they might want to put in the stadium here. And Bowser talked to J.P. Finley of Channel 4.
I'm starting to look at the other stadiums in the league to see what we think is working and what could work at RFK.
I saw you talking with Darryl Green there.
Yeah.
You guys were pointing at stuff.
Yeah.
What were you guys talking about? What has stood out to you?
Well, we were looking at the open air. We were looking at the standing room that makes the games more accessible to more people, the openness that's here, looking at the roof and all that
Think of the big screen.
It's big. It's big.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
Everything's big in Texas, but we know that we need a stadium that's going to take advantage of our great views, be a stadium that we can use year-round, and have a great fan experience.
Have you been to Atlanta or Minnesota yet?
I haven't, but the designers of the Minnesota stadium designed this one, and I will likely get to Atlanta.
What I value so much is, yes, we're indoors, but there's so much natural light, and the roof, it allows you to still feel like you're outside. Is that a goal, you think?
I think that's definitely a goal, and we want it to be intimate, so we want people to be close to the field. We want a lot of people to be able to enjoy it and enjoy the great views.
And then, I don't know what exactly is possible. Is there a way to get a view of the Capitol?
Absolutely.
Is that the plan?
Absolutely.
But Nats Park, you got no views. You have to be way up top. You'd love it just to be, that's the scene.
Right. And I think you can see the open air feeling here is what a lot of people like.
Yeah, now this is a retractable roof. It was closed yesterday. From what I understand, even though this is going to cost close to $4 billion to build it, it won't have a retractable roof. I've also heard this, and I don't know if this is true or not, but they're developing strains of grass that can grow under what is the natural light coming through the stadium. It's not going to be like the old Astrodome with the concrete roof, and so you couldn't grow grass in there. They put it that was fact that was called artificial turf because it was developed. It was called AstroTurf because it was developed, I think, by NASA people. And that was the first, and now it's something that nobody wants. They've got things like in Arizona where they can roll the field out and let it grow grass during the week and then roll it into the stadium. I don't think they're going to do that, But that's going to be it does not sound, though, that they're going to have a retractable roof. I think that the cost of that is going to be too high. When Jerry built Jerry World, that's how long ago it was, and it topped $1 billion. People went, oh, my God, it's over $1 billion. Well, now nobody's blinking, and it's close to $4 billion. And by the time they get into cost overruns and so forth, it's probably going to be over $4 billion. The city's paying $1 billion for it. But Bowser roaming around with Darryl Green was kind of an interesting look yesterday, and Darryl schmoozing it up with Tom Brady on the sidelines was also an interesting look. Coming up, Bram, and I'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m.